keen to share this one with you guys. I filmed this one back in 2024, late 2024, with Don Power. This is a long-form interview of us sitting down, chatting about many different topics, one of which is about the unconscious mind and how this can drive the bus of our lives. Around 95% of our mind's processing is unconscious, and Don works with people to help them understand and navigate their unconscious mind. It's a great conversation about how we can self-lead and how when your unconscious programming and conscious intentions move in the same direction, what that can do for you.
The notion of control is that you're making things go to a particular place or creating something that's fixed because it's under control. That means it can't deviate.
So it's
which limits options.
Right.
And the law of requisite variety, have you heard of that?
What's that one?
The law of requisite variety?
No.
Google it, it's worth looking up.
Okay.
Because it suggests that it's from systems thinking or cybernetics.
Or, yeah.
And it suggests that the part of the system with the most flexibility will control the system, will govern the system.
Okay, so bringing this into maybe leadership, did you see that quote that I sent you? I think it was Lao Tzu, who says the best leaders, in a way, are the ones who lead from behind. They're sort of allowing for this flexibility.
Flexibility equals options. And people who find themselves in an unwelcome place usually say that they didn't have any other option. Yet the true leaders have always got an option. And in fact, all of us, every decision we make, there's always an option. You may not like it, but there are options there.
So it's kind of like a conversation we're having in the car here about sometimes we can get caught in our stories, right? And if we follow the pattern of what that story tells us, it might limit us because we're creating these beliefs around a story. It seems like if we can step out of that narrative, then we're able to have that flexibility and would you say gain control of the situation or ourselves?
Manage the situation. Management's not controlling. Controlling isn't management. I guess to put this into what I think Mike wants is when I see a client for the first time, I have people refer people to me. And I always ask them, the one doing the referrer, not to tell the person what I do. Don't try and tell them what I do. Because as soon as you tell someone I do a particular thing, they'll put that in a pigeonhole and that's all I do. I do far more than NLP, far more than neurosemantics, far more than psychotherapy. So when someone comes in, I usually say to them, what did they tell you I do? And they say, they didn't. They just said, I needed to come and see you. So then I start to explain to them that most of the work I do is different to a psychologist or a psychiatrist or a medical doctor or a counsellor, is that I work with the person's unconscious mind. You know you have two minds. There's a conscious and unconscious mind. So how much of your mind is conscious, if you were to give me a percentage?
Okay, so I think it's like 10% or something like this, right?
Generally less than that.
Okay.
They suggested that Albert Einstein used about 8% of his mind consciously, which means that if we do the maths, how much of your mind is unconscious now?
92%, something like that.
Unconscious?
Unconscious?
Yeah. About 95?
25?
So most counselling or psychotherapy is addressing the conscious mind. Yet if the unconscious mind isn't in agreement with that, what's going to happen? Who's going to control? Who's going to be running this, driving the bus?
Right.
So I specialise in, or I talk to the person's unconscious mind. Because most people don't set out to be miserable. Most people don't set out to encounter problems. It just seems to happen. Yet deep inside there's a part of them that's making this happen. Does that make sense?
It does. It's almost like something that's just happening in the background, and it seems like your process of what you're talking about, the work that you do, helps people see those blind spots or those things that might be holding them back.
It doesn't make sense. One of the things to keep in mind
What doesn't make sense, sorry?
with the unconscious mind, doesn't work linearly. It's an all-encompassing. It's an abstract. Did you bring your unconscious mind here today?
Yeah, I think so.
How would you know?
Well, that's a question I kind of had for you, is how do we know? Because, like, it's kind of always with us, right? The unconscious.
One would hope so.
Right.
So you can hear me now consciously, can't you?
Right.
You can see me consciously.
Mm-hmm.
But you're totally unconscious right now about the feeling of your elbow on the desk.
Right.
Now it's there, isn't it?
Yep.
Was it there before?
I wasn't paying attention to it, no.
No, because your conscious mind's busy doing something else.
Right. It's sort of potentially distracted or focused on, because I'm going to be honest, I'm a bit nervous interviewing you, and that's probably a main sort of focus, and even me just navigating, orchestrating all the equipment and everything, that was my main focus in this moment right now. But what you're saying is all these other things, they're still there, we're just not consciously aware of them.
Is
that right?
And yet that unconscious mind is driving most of what we do.
Mm.
Most of what we do is not done out of volition, it's done out of habit or programming. They talk about neuro-linguistic programming. A lot of people think that the programming aspect of it is the controlling aspect. It's not. Programming is just a word that was used in the 70s to take the habitual side of our behaviour and put it in a lab. So we'll call it programming. But in fact it's just a habit. We habitually do things because that's the way we do it. That's the way it works. So how do we build these habits? Have you seen this before?
External event. I haven't seen this before, but I've been looking into your work a little bit and looking into how we have that many things coming in. That's on a daily basis, is it? Or is that our potential in a moment?
At any moment.
Yeah. Okay.
It's a nominalisation to represent a lot of data. Right. You got to remember this stuff came about, a lot of it in the 60s and 70s, when computers were almost unheard of. Mm-hmm. And the only way they knew how to measure a lot of data was with bits per second.
Right.
So that's what the BPS stands for. So we're getting this bombarding us at all, like the elbow on the table, or the shoes on your feet, or the hum of the air conditioning. All of that is around us all the time, but we're deleting, distorting and generalising it down to a 7 plus or minus 2. They call it the magic number. That's about what we can handle at any one time, consciously. But the rest of it's going in. It's not lost. It's there.
Right. That's an interesting idea. Is like we take on these things as bodily. Would you say bodily memories, like memories in the body or in the unconscious?
It would depend what the situation is, okay, as to what channel it's going to go through.
Because we've got these many senses that filter these things.
Yeah, we've got different senses that work in different situations. Mm-hmm. We'll talk about that in a moment. Okay. So an example of what's the first one?
Delete.
Delete. Deletion is your elbow on the table.
Mm-hmm.
That's an example of a cognitive deletion. We just delete it. because it's not necessary, it's not important to your survival. And you must remember that your unconscious mind is there to protect you and make sure you survive. That's its task. You don't have to think about that. The distortion is someone with a phobia. Have you seen people with a cockroach phobia? They see a cockroach and they freak out. A cockroach isn't going to hurt you, is it? But those phobias are there, and it'll distort a cockroach or a spider into something that's going to attack me, like a dinosaur. And the mind will blow that cockroach up into something that's huge and dangerous, like a crocodile. You'd think so, by the way, the person who acts. And a generalization. We generalize and apply the characteristics of one example and apply it to the whole class, because it's easier to think about it that way. So this deletion, distortion and generalization is taking place all the time. It's continually going ahead. And we does through a series of filters. The first one is our... Can you just turn that so I can read it a little bit? Just this is our values and beliefs. Values are the things that we rely upon to provide motivation. We're motivated by fulfilling values, things that we value. We attribute a value to it, not necessarily dollars and cents, but most of our goals are fulfilling a value. And our beliefs are an interesting thing. We believe things out of convenience rather than truth.
Is it comfort as well? Is that kind of...
Well, it's convenient, yeah. And the fact is that no belief that anyone holds is universally true in all cases. Not one belief that any human being holds is universally true. There will be an exception somewhere. Another filter we've got is the decisions that we've made. I'll never talk to that person again. And those decisions can either enhance or stuff up our life. The language we use, and I'm not talking just about the oral tonal language that we express, or even the postural language that we use. What about the language we use on ourselves? Have you got a voice in your head that you have discussions with yourself? Only one, or do you have more than one?
Yeah, there's potentially more than one. There's one talking to the other one, and it's just like, it's interesting when you think about it, because I've always had a bit of something I've become more aware of lately is how I'm sometimes aggressive towards myself. Like I'll
do the self-abuse pattern.
Self-abuse, right?
Yeah.
And it's like a matter of catching yourself and being like, no, you're kind of worth loving, or self, that idea of self-love towards yourself, right? Like you got to respect yourself and your internal dialogue. It's a matter of catching your internal dialogue, because that's going to potentially, correct me if I'm wrong, like affect your outer world.
What I look for in language with people is, for example, when there's multiple languages going on inside, people will often express it by saying, I'd like to do that, but I don't think I can. Or they use their hands like this. On one hand I want to do this, but on the other hand I don't. So there's almost like there's two people in there who aren't in agreement. And that'll cause stress, because they're moving in different directions. So language is the other thing that language provides us with. It's a microscope into the neurology of the person, or our own neurology. The only way we've got of determining what's going on inside, there's no biological markers for it. There's no black and white distinctions. The only way we've got of knowing what's going on inside is the language the person uses to express what's going on inside. They're going to language it and get it out, whether it's a postural language, that is using hands and facial expressions, or tonal language, which is our voice. And there's qualities of both. Different qualities mean different things. And it's the meanings that we make from this language, whether it's the language we're using inside or the language we're expressing outside. It's the meanings that we give it to it and our audience gives to it that determines what we're going to do about it. So we're meaning-making machines. That's what we do. We make meaning of everything. Everything that we do, like someone came and closed the door before, we give that a meaning. It may be a little meaning, or it could be something that's really important. So these meanings are expressed in language. Then we have meta-programs, I think. Memories. Memories are really interesting. I get excited about memories. Because the fact is that memories come to us from the past. They're not real. You can't show me a memory. You might have an artifact left over from that memory, but the actual memory itself is gone. And we actually have memories that we put out in the future. So that's a memory too. And the unconscious mind can't distinguish between past, present and future. Time doesn't exist at the unconscious level. Time only exists now. And whoops, we just lost that one. The only thing that's real is now. And the unconscious mind will treat a past memory or a future memory as if it's now. That's why people can experience anxiety now about something that hasn't happened, because they're bringing that into now. Does that make sense?
It does. It sort of reminds me of this idea of fear as in being false evidence appearing real, right? If you break down that idea, it's like it seems internally, it seems like it's really happening, and we're actually getting attacked like we would if we were getting attacked by a tiger or something. But really,
people die of fright. That's a much used expression, but it's real. People die of fright. Some people would die to be right. So this memories coming from the past are really learning opportunities. Yet if we take it as an emotional experience, it's going to cloud the learning. So we'll show you some of that stuff in future episodes. Then we have meta-programs. Meta-programs are our predisposition, our default ways of operating. It's a predisposition to the way we want to operate. The example of a meta-program is the introvert-extrovert scale, where people will be predisposed to be extroverted or be the life of the party or sit in the corner and read a book. So meta-programs, they filter what we do. Remember, all of these filters we're putting here are just that, filters. They determine what we delete, distort and generalise of the data coming in. And then there's time, space and energy. That is the time of the day, the space we're in, and the energy that's around us will determine what we delete, distort and generalise. So we get all of this information and crunch it down, and then we put it up onto a screen. An internal representation. And I've intentionally hyphenated the word representation because it's presenting again that which is on the outside, and it's presenting again on the inside. Yet it often bears very little resemblance between the two. What we do is we create pictures in our mind. So we have a visual representational channel. I guess you can get a picture of someone that's really important to your life. Is it black and white or colour?
It's pretty vibrant.
It's vibrant, is it? But they're not in the room, are they? But you've got that in your mind. And often the qualities or the specifications that we bring to these pictures will determine whether we like something or not. People often represent figures that they don't like in black and white or sepia. They might express things that they're attracted to in colour. They could be fuzzy, could be clear.
So is this in the realm of bias and creating biases, do you think?
Could be bias could be another word for predisposition.
Okay.
Predisposed to do something because the channels are clear, well exercised, well used. You're not going to use the road that's full of potholes or that hurt you in the past. So then we have the sounds of the world. That is our auditory channels. Some people say they don't hear sounds in their head, but I think they do. And depending on what you're doing, those particular channels will clear up. For example, someone who's challenged in the auditory channel normally might advance that if they go to a rock concert or an opera or something like that. So, for example, in the visual channel, I remember saying to a client once, he said he couldn't see a way forward. That was the words he used when he presented. And I asked him if he ever sees pictures in his mind. He said he didn't. I said to him, but you're married, can you get a picture of your wife? He said, I know what she looks like, I don't need a picture. So he really was depleted in the visual representation. So with some exercises, and he'd seen some stuff as a child which had clouded his ability to create pictures in his mind. Interesting. Then we have the feelings, the tactile touch or movement, a kinesthetic channel. We represent that when I'm working in this field as VAK, just to make it simple. So if Julie's talking to me about something, I'll say, have you got a VAK for that? That's just code for visual auditory kinesthetic. There are other channels. There's our olfactory, which is our ability to smell. Our gustatory, which is our taste on the palate. And our auditory digital. Auditory digital is different to auditory tonal. The A in the first line, the auditory there is auditory tonal. This is auditory digital. That is, it's either on or off. It's not analogous, whereas volume and clarity can be analogous. It can be really loud or really soft or anywhere in between. Whereas digital, it's either on or off. So that's the difference between those auditories. So what we do with that, we create a map. That screen of our mind, that internal representation, is a map of the territory. The territory's out there. The map's inside. And any map you look at, these maps here, that's not Cairns Inlet. That's a representation of Cairns Inlet. The water is there, but it's blue. It's blue ink on paper. And I'll guarantee there's some data missing from that, deleted. And I'll guarantee there's parts of it that are distorted. And they're generalised. This green portion down here is a flood area that's supposed to flood in a cyclone. So that has a purpose. That map has a purpose. All of our maps have a purpose. This map territory distinction was first postulated by a guy called Alfred Korzybski in 1933. He wrote a book called Science and Sanity. Julie's got a copy. It's a great cure for insomnia, isn't it?
Certainly.
He's also the one that first uttered the words neuro-linguistic training. he called it neuro-linguistic training. Richard Bandler's the one that called it neuro-linguistic programming because he was working on computers at the time. So this map creates a state. Now, I don't mean a state of Queensland, I mean a mind-body state. And it could be a state of excitement, could be a state of rest, or could be a state of enjoyment. And that state will influence our physiology. And the physiology will feed back onto the state and influence the state and the map. So we've got a looping happening here. It's from our state that our behaviours emerge. So it's the state that governs the behaviour. The difference between a mediocrity in terms of behaviour or excellent behaviour is a result of the state that we're in when we undertake that behaviour. So it's the state governs the behaviour. So if we look at that diagram, where are the leverage points if we're going to change behaviour? Because what people present with in a coaching situation, or if they're looking to apply this to leadership, it'll be their behaviour that's interpreted. If we're going to change behaviour, where are the leverage points there?
I would think it would be potentially state, because if we can change our state, then we can change the outcome.
So going back tracking, where's the leverage points to change the state?
Well, that comes to our perception of what appears to be in front of us, right? So how we're interpreting what's there, how we interpret our beliefs, and all these things here that you were listing up the top there. If we have stories around certain things, we can work on shifting them to get past them. Would you say that?
What are you going to work on?
Values and beliefs.
Right, that's a pretty good place to start. Everything in there is a leverage point. It could be simply changing the physiology. Mm-hmm. I've had people walk into my office and they're there for depression. They came to see me to stop being depressed. You can tell when someone's depressed, can't you? They slump forward, they kind of shuffle, they don't swing their arms. So that's how you do depression, isn't it? I quite often ask these people, can you show me how you do depression? And they're standing like this. So the first thing I get them to do before they even sit down is to stand up straight. Just try this. Just straighten up. Straighten up, shoulders back, chin out. Take a nice deep breath. And now put a big smile on your face. A great big smile, big toothy smile. Now try and be depressed. Can't, can you? So that's the first intervention that we use.
Right.
So just changing physiology will change the state.
Mm-hmm.
So another one that we often do is alter the map. So quite often get people to get a picture of something that they don't like and get a picture of it and make it really big inside and then zoom it out and put it up on the wall up there, about the size of a pea. And where's the depression? Where's the uncomfortable feeling? It's up there. We can bring it back, but often they don't want it back. So simply just changing the map and the decisions and the language and all of that, that's how we change behaviour. So that's NLP 101.
You got some other questions there, just to shift gears a little bit into
This idea of, because this is what you're hinting to, was the perception is your projection. Is that correct? Is that how you would word that?
That's one of the presuppositions of NLP, mm-hmm. And it's really, who's following Donald Trump at the moment? Anyone following?
Reluctantly, yes.
not me.
It's worth doing because it's a great lesson in perception and projection. As soon as something doesn't go well for him, he starts accusing the other side of exactly what he's doing. So he's projecting his world onto the world outside. And whenever someone is constantly encountering a particular situation in their world, look at their world, because they'll be projecting it out there. Perception is projection, and projection is our perception.
Right. And what we see in others that we don't like is often a reflection of something that we might need to work on.
Exactly, yeah. Exactly. Always.
And things we like as well, right? Things we like in others, the traits we like in others, we can...
That's why relationships that are established based on what the people involved might call complementary behaviours or complementary ways of operating, they're rarely sustainable, because one party will develop and the other party will become redundant. So this seeking out in others what I'm lacking isn't going to work. So perception and projection, big one.
Could you elaborate on that just a little more, please?
It's quite... I'm just trying to think how I can... an example I can
Is there
give
an
you.
example, maybe?
Sorry?
Is there an example that you know, with someone you've worked with, maybe that...
Donald Trump's the best example I've ever seen of projection and perception. He accuses all of those around him of exactly what he's
Doing.
projecting.
Mm.
So his perception of the world is one of scarcity, one of conflict. Nothing happens without a conflict. And he can't lose, even to the point of cheating at golf. So he will change the world to suit himself. So people who... you'd probably get them here in the maritime courses who maybe live in a world of conflict or had conflicts with their schooling or academic situation. They're going to bring that into the room, and they'll see it here the moment they walk in the door. They'll perceive it. There's conflict here. So what you do is you break that right up front. So any perception that you've got of this being like school, we abolish that.
Yeah, in the first 5 minutes.
And it works for you, doesn't it?
Yeah, very well.
Yeah. So you can help people to change their perception. We have fun here.
Yeah. Serious fun.
Is that an explanation for you?
Thank you. I mean, I look at this from the perspective of a business owner running a business, and I guess maybe from the perspective of hiring staff, about projecting and ensuring that everyone coming in, because we're a small company as well, is that we have complementary skills, not necessarily... I mean, our values are extremely important, and we hire based on values. However, we operate a little differently to each other, and it's getting that balance of complementary. A little bit of a pushback is good, thinking a little differently is good, and it's getting that balance right. So I look at that, projection, perception, I mean, from a professional development perspective, and even from a continuous learning from myself, I go, how different do I want someone else to be, to help me then think about and reflect on where I am and what my beliefs are right now, and how I need to now just look at those again, and are they still of value now, or is it time to move? And it's always that, we know that within an organisation it's always about relationships. That's where your biggest challenges are around relationships. So looking for complementary but enough pushback, enough difference, it's that balancing act that I think about most days.
What you said earlier about you look for values,
Yes.
by focusing on values, you're allowing that difference to be complementary.
Yeah.
It's when I spoke before about a relationship that's based on complementary, in other words, a shortfall in one being made up by the ability of the other.
Yes, it's that balancing.
That's
act I'm
short
talking
term.
about. Yeah.
That'll work short term.
Yeah.
But if you want long-term sustainable complementary operation, you need to go to values,
Okay.
because values are far more enduring than a goal.
Yeah. Or a belief, because you can change your mind about that.
Yeah, so what you're doing is, by focusing on values,
Mm.
you're heading it off at the pass. And that's
Right, that clarifies.
that's where relationships and relationships of the heart and the relationships of the business, they're still relationships.
Mm.
By focusing on values, that bond or that relationship will endure beyond most others. And
So that is the foundation of.
you look at we just had the grand finals in football.
Mm.
The clubs that win are working on values.
Yeah.
Those that struggle are working on goals. I often used to talk about the difference between goals and values. Do you want to go there?
Yeah, well, I was thinking that I found that people struggle to understand what their values are. They don't know them, so they're trying to find out what's
Yeah.
a good way to find out, to sort of elicit or
Most people
determine
think
what
of
their values are.
goals as values.
Yes.
I want a car, or I want to do this, or I want to do that. The problem with being goal focused is that once you achieve the goal, what's next? When I was living in Mackay, I used to train down at Slade Point Athletic Track once a week, and there'd be a little Aboriginal girl there running around the track, and her goal was to win a gold medal. And she ended up winning a gold medal in the biggest stage of all, the 400 metres in Sydney Olympics. Her name was Kathy Freeman. She achieved her goal. What happened after that? Anyone remember?
Yeah.
Mm.
Without a goal, she seemed to struggle over purpose.
Yeah.
And then her life went down the drain a bit.
Went down the drain big time.
Yeah.
Ended up on the streets of Harlem, penniless and destitute. And she got herself out of it by focusing on values.
Mm.
So goals are our KPIs. In business we focus on goals. I see a question on your tongue.
Yeah, I'm just waiting to jump in. It seems like it's interesting how you say goals. They often aren't long-term orientated, right? Like you can use goals to get somewhere, but then you've almost got to set another goal to get past that.
That's right.
But if you have values as the foundation, that can carry you through. Because if you're thinking about Kathy as well, there's that idea of like, I don't know what it was called, I think it's like killing the seagull. It's like this idea of like, if you kill the seagull, then there's nothing else to go after. So you just like, you might feed the seagull some chicks or whatever it is, and it hangs around, but you still got something to chase, kind of thing. And
That's a nice metaphor.
Interesting.
yeah, I read that somewhere. I thought that was quite fascinating.
Sounds like Jonathan Livingston Seagull,
I think it is actually.
which is a metaphor in and of itself, the book.
And thank you, I have that. You gave it to me.
Yeah. So these goals are material things, and they offer short-term motivation, but they won't sustain us long-term. They are our KPIs in business. Our business is usually based on key performance indicators represented by dollars or tonnage or number of units produced or whatever. So they're our goals. In order to achieve our goals, we need to behave in a certain way. And our behaviour will determine whether or not we achieve our goals. So if we behave or do things in a particular way, it's going to be easy to achieve our goals. If we don't do that or do something different, it could be harder. So the amount of effort needed to achieve the goal is determined by our behaviour. The thing that influences the quality of our behaviour is the state we're in. So we're getting back to state, which was produced by our filters and maps, and so the state we're in will determine the quality of our behaviour, which determines whether or not we achieve our goals. So it's all about state. I often use the example in a training of, I haven't heard of him lately, Usain Bolt, the runner, the 100-metre runner, the fastest man on earth. Have you ever watched him run? When he comes down onto the track, he takes off his tracksuit and he puts his feet about that far apart, and he gets a glazed look come over his face, and he shakes his fingers. What's he doing? Why does he shake his fingers?
Changing his state, preparing.
He's not going to run with his fingers. I mean, he won't leave them behind, but
Some form of preparation. Like
what's he doing?
he sort of
Preparing.
We
to
call
say
it
that-
preparation. What do you mean by preparation? It's chunk down on preparation.
presence,
Sorry?
groundedness. He's trying to ground. He's trying to be present in that moment so he can do the one task he needs to do.
Chunk down on that. What's he doing? Think of terms of state, behaviour, goal. He's getting into a state. He's getting into a state of mind and body. Because by changing his mind state, he will change his body state. So he's preparing himself in terms of state. So if he got down to the track and took off his tracksuit and looked up the track and went, would that work for him? No, wrong state. So how often do people come into your office or your business, and are they in the right state? Are they in the state that's going to help them achieve their goals? So it's all about state. So when we looked at the leverage points in that previous slide, all of those inputs into the state are going to change the behaviour, the quality of the behaviour. So I call this being. What we're being determines what we do, which determines what we have. And it's no coincidence that the word behave is a conjunction of be, have. What we're being determines the quality of what we have.
So this is coming back to this idea of be, do, have.
Yes.
Yeah.
Could you explain, Don,
It's
how
all
we might
about-
be able to use be, do, have as a way to set an outcome for ourselves?
It's all about being. People will often tell you what they're doing, but they've overlooked what they're being. And if you're talking about leadership, it's a matter of, in order for them to be the leader that they want to be, what do they need to be in terms of state? Because they'll implement new behaviours and new procedures and write memos, and it's not about that. It's about what they're being.
We find this in, over the years, find it in business. From a training company's perspective, when things aren't working with an organisation, within the culture of an organisation, they'll often use training as a motivation to get a different outcome. So if they're not getting the outcomes they're looking for, then often what they'll do is initiate some training. What they tend to miss is, and overlook, is that if that staff member has been able to do that job for a period of time with the goal, that the objective that they were looking for in the first place, more training isn't going to give them a different outcome. They don't train for the
They're not interested.
about what they're being. They're just giving them something else to do.
See, if someone's done the job for 3 months, they know 99% of what they need to do the job, an outstanding job, and a really top class job. If they can do it for 3 months, 90 days, that's about enough. The real kicker in this is the state the person's in, and yet most companies are reluctant to have their staff look at the states they're in. But those states will be permeating through the work and the output that they produce at work. It'll also have repercussions in their family life. People think they can leave their family life at home when they get into the office, but it's still inside.
So this sort of raises this idea of the inner leader again, right? So it's our willingness to deal with our inner processes, and also like, because what I'm thinking is like, I've co-founded a company and I'm running business and stuff, and it's such a, if you will, a spiritual journey or an inner journey, where you're battling with a lot of the things internal that are just a reflection of what challenges you see in the outside world.
You're projecting it onto the outside, yeah.
Mm.
Projection of perception.
Right.
Stephen Covey wrote the book 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. First habit is get to know yourself. Understand yourself. Because until you understand yourself, you've got no hope of understanding anyone else. Because you'll always be filtering through your own shortcomings and challenges that you face. You'll be filtering your experience of the world and projecting that out onto it. So it'll be reflected right back at you.
This is what I mentioned earlier about as the CEO of this company, and transforming from being a worker to someone managing and leading. It has been a transformational process, and that constant reflection, the looking at beliefs, as I mentioned earlier, and then going, do they still hold fast? What is different about that now? Do I need to hang on to that? Do I need to let that go now? It is a daily thing.
Julie used to work in the business.
I worked in the business.
Now she works on the business.
Yeah. I'm a different person now, and I've had to become that every day.
So it's like a constant character building process.
Mm-hmm.
It's about who you become in the process. Right?
And it's that willingness. What I find,
it's got to be
myself
okay
is
to get it wrong.
It's got to be okay to get. You learn more from getting it wrong than you do from getting it right.
Some of our programs are accessible, and we're often asked, what is the pass mark? And my response to that is, what's it okay for you not to know? There is no pass mark. It's a matter of, let's look at the old system where 50% might have been a pass mark. Someone who gets 51, they pass. If 50 is the pass mark, 51's a pass.
Right.
What about the person who gets 49? They get some feedback. They get to do it again. And they're probably going to come out with a far better result than 51.
Mm-hmm.
So don't look upon the 49 as a lost cause. It's an opportunity to learn even more.
So this is not the traditional education model. We're talking about vocational training specifically, which is competency-based. So when we're talking competency-based, there is no pass or fail. It is not yet competent, or you haven't met a satisfactory You're not at that point yet, so let's have some more training, let's put some more work in, and then let's assess again. So that person who was 49% may come back and for us, I mean, competency-based is when you know it, when you can do it, you can do it. So it's 100%. So we bring them up to 100%. We work with them for them to come up to 100%.
So it's not okay for them not to know everything.
Yeah, and it's actually for the person who got their 51% and walked away, they've missed an opportunity for the rest.
Also missed an opportunity to recognise where they're at and build resilience. You know, to say, okay, well, that was a perceived failure perhaps, now I need to go back and do it again, and then they have a different level of competency on that outcome. The state of being has changed, and they build some resilience on the way. It's a really good outcome, and that bolsters their state of being ongoing. They're able to manage their moods and things like that ongoing and show up for their work, for their vocation, in a much more self-leading way.
So it's okay not to know. It's okay to get it wrong, provided the appropriate feedback is given
Provided.
and accepted. The real winners, the ones who get along, when you give them feedback, they go, "Gee, thanks for that." Whereas the ones that struggle go, "Oh, did I get it wrong, did I?" And they'd start the self-abuse pattern.
Mm.
It's almost like a reframing of failure.
There's no such thing as failure, it's just feedback. Another presupposition of NLP. So, as I said, KPIs, the goals we set for ourselves are how we measure our success. So that's the KPIs that we have there. What's the purpose of a goal or the purpose of behaviour? Why do we do things and why do we want to have things? What's the purpose of it?
I feel like humans, we're kind of curious creatures who want to see our potential fulfilled.
Yeah.
And goals could probably represent that ambition.
If you got this here, where do you put ambition?
It could be between state and behaviour potentially.
Is it a state or behaviour?
I feel like it starts with a state, but it becomes reality through behaviour.
It's evidenced in behaviour, but it's a state. The reason we want to have things, or the reason we do things, is to fulfill a value and thereby improve the state. So we think someone who wants to be ambitious might want to go out and buy themselves a bigger computer or a smarter phone, thinking that having that will improve their state. Maybe it will, maybe it won't. But states are the reason we do everything, to take ourselves from discomfort to comfort, from fear to courage. So that's the whole reason we do things, the whole reason we want to have things. So what Julie does is she focuses on the value that it provides. And values are often represented in states, like courageous, like confidence. Confidence is a noun. So that's getting into the definition of a value. A value is a noun that you can't touch. They're abstract nouns. If you can touch it, if you can put it in a wheelbarrow or take a picture of it, it's not a value. So we'll work on values. We should do a whole thing on values. We regularly look at values at Paradigm, don't we?
We do. We, years ago when we first set up our RTO as a company and as every team member, we sat around and we discovered our values, our individual values, and then our shared values, and they became our company values. When we moved here, we've been here 5 years, we've been a registered training organisation for 10 years, this is our 10th year. I had them on a sheet of paper because we did them on a flip chart, and we put them away when we moved out here, and I pulled them back out again about 3 years ago and put them up on the board and looked at how we were going with our values, and it was remarkable to identify how we had met them throughout those years to have become the training company we are now. And it was through the identification, and then we just began to fulfill our values. And it was interesting to give them we had our number one value, our number two. Every now and again I pull the sheet out again and put it up on the whiteboard, and we go revisit it again and see whether we need to, move them around a little bit. We need to put a bit more emphasis maybe on sustainability at the moment, or we need to put a bit more emphasis on wellness, our well-being. We might be doing a little bit more on that, or our relationships. How are our relationships going? So we can metric that, so we can measure that. It's been really valuable for the company. So our values are on our website. Our values never change. Our focus may change a little. However, underpinning all of that, our values have remained the same, and it's created quite a different business model. We're known for it, actually.
Would you say, Julie, then that those collective of individual values and the shared values could be used to write a mission statement and vision statements for a company or a business?
We did do that. We do have our mission statement, vision statement built off our values. We did that at that same time. Again, they're on our website.
So does that help explain what we do here?
I think it does.
Or does it raise more questions than it answers?
Well, I've always got questions, but it makes sense, and it seems like these following values is a great way to embody this sense of being, to then be able to do, to then be able to have or achieve.
Yeah. And people who are doing lots of stuff, to answer Mike's question, doing lots of stuff and not getting anywhere, what's the state are they coming from? It's no good just looking at what they're doing. What's driving what they're doing?
Right.
And it is interesting. You can tell when someone they're coming from a state of fear, or a state of desperation, or a state of, their behaviours reflect that, and their outcomes. So their goals, I find that whole, following it back to their state as a fascinating identification of what's going, as a snapshot of where they are right now. And definitely someone operating from a state of fear, you can almost predict how it's going to turn out for them.
You're a human doing instead of a human being.
How does one... The question, how you guys feeling to keep going down by sort of this part of the conversation? Did you want to go somewhere else? Or, because I had another question about that, in terms of, if someone's battling with those, I don't know, I feel like I like to call them blind spots, or things that they can't identify, these fears and these things that create that distorted state.
That opens up a whole other about the human and how we operate. So there is a whole other subject behind that about what fear is and what it does within the body from a chemical perspective, and that will impact on your behaviours because of the fight or flight mechanism. There's a whole lot of chemical reactions going on in your body depending on how you're being. And that is a topic that we cover within NLP as well.
Mm-hmm.
Don, you wanted to say something? You've got your
Next slide up.
your next slide.
But
This is
I
where
think
you
it's
go.
worth
Let me know if
talking
we take
to
a break.
expanding on what you just said.
Okay, so he'll take you there. Okay.
People often that they assess their own performance based on the fear or a negative driver. By a negative driver, I mean if they're too close to the fire, they're being burnt, and they don't want to be burnt. One of the things that our unconscious mind can't do is it can't process a negative. You can't not think about what you don't want to think about without thinking about it. Now think about that. the neurology just doesn't work, with good reason. Can you think of the reason it doesn't work? Why? What's the purpose, or what's the reason for our unconscious mind not being able to process a negative?
Survival.
What's that?
Survival.
No, it can't do it. It can't process a negative.
Only process the positive, well, balance of things.
What's behind this notion of not being able to process a negative? And it really makes sense.
Because it's illusory? It's...
The fact is, you can't not do something.
Mm.
You can't not do
You
something.
can only do or be.
You can only do. You can't not do.
Coming back to the now, right? And being in this moment, we can only do in the moment.
Well, because the unconscious mind is in the moment. And show me how you don't do something.
It's like this idea of like, what are you doing today? Oh, nothing. It's like, that
Well,
imposes no thing, but it's like you're still doing something.
That's right.
Exactly, yeah.
Because you can't not do something.
So the unconscious mind is absolutely correct in not being able to not do something.
It will be doing something.
So that's the kicker here, is that you're always doing something. Is that something helping you achieve your goals and fulfill your values, or is it getting in the way? There's something getting in the way. And it's just a matter of finding out what's in the way. It's pretty simple, this stuff. I've had psychologists tell me that it can't be this simple. Well, yes, it can. Well, you can make it hard if you want. Yeah. Okay. There's more to us than just our ability to do things. Have you heard of the term multiple intelligences?
Yeah. The way I would interpret it is like animals have a different kind of intelligence than humans, and then you have plant intelligence and all these kind of things. Is that kind of what you mean?
Kind of. It comes from a guy called Howard Gardner, who back in the 60s came up with this notion of people having more intelligence than just the Aristotelian intelligence, the ability to think in a straight line. It's actually a holistic form of intelligence. And there was a guy called Daniel Goleman, wrote a book called EQ, which is emotional intelligence. He wasn't the founder of EQ, that was founded by a guy called Peter Salovey, and Mayer was the other one. And they were working on this notion of emotional intelligence, and Goleman, in fact, was a journalist for the New York Times, a newspaper in New York, and he was writing articles on EQ, which seemed to catch the public's attention, and he wrote the book, and he got all the accolades, and Mayer and Salovey got nothing, apparently. So there's this notion of intelligence being our ability to handle facts and figures, or data. We call that IQ, intelligence quotient, that's what it stands for. And that's where we measure our ability to think logically, apply reasoning, and store knowledge. Facts and figures.
Schools. So this is this traditional school approach, the measurement of IQ for success.
Apparently there's like 8 different intelligences or something like this, right?
That's
There's
right.
quite a few than just a traditional
IQ. It is not an indicator of success, IQ.
That's Howard Gardner came up with the 8, yeah, right in the beginning. But it was too many for people to think about. Remember, they can only process 7 plus or minus 2. chunks of information. So they distilled it down to 3.
So you,
Just
you've got-
sorry, I was
IQ.
going to say in that we can
So-
edit this out. What I'm going to say here is that on your model here, we've got SQ as strength intelligence as our drive, and whether you're aware or not now, there's a few other SQs getting around. Spiritual
The
intelligence.
next one that I put up is EQ, because most people have
Yeah.
heard of that.
But I'm just letting you know that there's a few SQs around, so we can determine.
because the SQ you refer to as strength intelligence. So
Or
that's-
spiritual.
Or spirit.
Spiritual intelligence.
How spirited are we? But I tend not to
Social
use the term
intelligence
spirit.
is getting around as well.
Your social
which is-
intelligence
It's a
comes
branch of
under
EQ,
well, it's a branch of EQ.
but they're labouring at that. Just
I
letting you
tend
know.
not to use the word spirit because people attach it to a religious thing or something like that. So I talk about strength. Yeah. So EQ is our ability to build rapport with others, to understand other people's emotions, and a bit like 7 habits. Understand yourself before you try and understand others. It's where we communicate from. Our emotions will determine how we communicate and what's the unsaid message, the underlying message in our communication. And then there's that one of strength or passion, our inspiration, our meaning, the meaning that we give to things. Meaning is an interesting word. When we say meaning, it's actually an ancient Dutch word, and it's the word my or mine is a derivative of meaning. So when I make meaning, I'm making something mine. So that's why the meaning making that we're constantly doing is so important. People, just like any of our channels when we're making up the maps of our mind, so some of these channels we use more often than others. Just like that, we use different intelligences, and some people have strengths and others are challenged in certain areas. So if we look at people who are SQ, IQ strong, that is, they've got a lot of intelligence, they're really knowledgeable and they know a lot about what they're doing, and they're really passionate about it. That passion is really strong. What sort of people fall into that category? Their strength is their passion and their knowledge.
Management.
Sorry?
Management.
Example?
Manager of a company. Just managing.
Well, you're sitting next to one.
budgets and data.
I
Mostly.
would push
But-
back on that. I think my EQ is pretty good.
Yeah, because you're a leader. A leader and a manager.
There's a group of them down the road. So a company that we're associated with they have a tech company, and their workforce is mainly computer technicians and computer programmers. I would put them very firmly along that line of SQ IQ. Incredibly intelligent, incredibly passionate about what they do, and they're changing the world. I would see them along that side. I've got a really good accountant who's
The
like this.
distinguishing point here about these ones is that they lack the EQ. Their EQ is a bit short, so
Yes.
they have trouble communicating.
Yes.
So their relationships are usually a bit ragged. So they're very passionate about what they do. They've got a lot of knowledge. This also applies to medical specialists who lack the bedside manner.
This became an issue over the years. It's been quite a few years now, but they've included in the degrees and with doctors that they have to meet requirements of that EQ side of things to be able to relate to their patients.
They call it soft skills.
Whereas before they didn't, and it was an illness in a bed.
Right. I've been talking to Mike about this idea of agility coaching and this kind of thing, where is this kind of similar lines where you're considering the other person, you're considering like them on a more personal level rather than just being a number.
Rather than them just being a number. Yeah, and actually not being able to identify with them as anything but a number. So a restriction in your ability to operate at that level. That EQ deficient. So EQ, is passionate about what they do, high IQ, unable to necessarily build relationships.
So these people work in isolation.
Yeah.
They're good on their own. They have trouble identifying as being part of a team. What about people who are IQ, EQ strong? That is, they've got a lot of intelligence and a lot of knowledge, and they're really good at communicating with others, but they don't get around to it. They don't get around to completing the job.
Well, what's missing from that is that they have the IQ, they can communicate that to others, but they never get around to doing it themselves. So that's the deficiency there, is the inability to actually put, what they refer to it as, putting the pedal to the metal.
The rubber to the road.
The rubber to the road.
Yeah.
They can tell others how they should do it, but can't do it themselves, or don't get around to doing it themselves.
So these people stagnate. You find them at the water fountain, where the cold water comes out, or in the coffee room, the tea room. Chatter. Really good at relationships, really good at communicating, know a lot of stuff, but they don't get around to completing the job. So they're the stagnate. They often, I used to put public servants in there until we did a couple of jobs for public servants and they didn't like it.
Didn't go down very well.
What about SQ, EQ strength? So they're really passionate and they're really good at communicating, but they haven't got the knowledge. What sort of people come in there? I'll let you off the hook. People in here are 4 times more likely to succeed. Look at Richard Branson. They hire the knowledge they want.
Delegate.
I'm about to do that now. There are aspects of the business that I just don't know, that much about. I'd rather hire someone really good at it than attempt to do it myself. So it'll be related to something technical. I appreciate I can't know everything. I make it a point of learning what it is that I need and really want to know. And then other things I just hire brokers, or I hire a really good accountant, or I hire a really good lawyer, or I can't know everything. So I've got the passion, and I am pretty good at building relationships. There are aspects of the business I just have to get someone else to look after.
Yeah.
And it's better that way.
It is.
Yeah.
And that whole thing about, you were talking before, Mike, about people progressing into leadership. The manager works on SQ, IQ. That's managing tasks. To move into leadership, they need to develop EQ.
Yeah.
Right.
Because it's now about people. Their business is people. What's the biggest challenge you have in this business, Shirley?
Relationships.
Getting trainers.
And
Who share your vision.
yeah, and that is it. It's getting the trainers to share the vision. Absolutely.
Yeah. So leadership is about developing EQ. I can't express that strongly enough. You see, what tends to happen, someone will join an organisation and they work their way up into management, and then they're promoted into leadership. So they could be an engineer. Let's say they're in engineering, and they're a really good engineer, so they get promoted into a leadership role in the engineering department. Guess what? You've just lost your best engineer and you've got the world's worst leader.
Right.
There was a book written, actually, it was, it'll come to me, and it was really the underlying premise is that people are elevated into their level of incompetence. Then what do you do with them?
So we were invited to go to Brunei to do a job for Shell in Brunei they had these, they call it cryogenic heat exchangers. They're like a big cylinder, probably 3 or 4 metres in diameter and maybe 50, 60 metres tall, and they're full of pipes about the size of a pencil, and they run the LNG through it, because LNG becomes a liquid when it gets really cold. So these were big refrigeration things, and they were leaking and they needed to be replaced, which was a big engineering job, because they had to take the existing faulty, there were 5 of them, by the way. They had 5 trains. They call it production trains, where they process the LNG. And they'd been going for 25 years, and they'd never lost a cargo. They'd never missed a vessel, a sailing, because the vessels had come down from Japan, load up with LNG and go back to Japan, and so they were going backwards and forwards. They had a schedule going for 25 years, and they'd never missed a sailing. So, but they had to take out the faulty heat exchanger and put in a new one. So they actually did it in such a way that they built the new one beside the old one that was leaking. They were already $5 million. They were doing the first one, and they realised that they were in trouble, because they were about they'd lost about $5 million on the job, and that still wasn't finished, and they got 4 more to do. And they'd never missed, so those 4 had to keep running while they were doing this one. And it involved a bit of oxytorch and whatever around a leaking LNG plant. I didn't like the sound of that. But anyway, a guy called Gilbert Habets, a Dutchman from Dutch Shell, was the head of the project, and we had run into him in Kuala Lumpur doing a 3-day leadership program, and he rang me up one day, 3 months after the program, and he said, "Don, we want you to come over and do a team building exercise," because what they had was Halliburton. Have you heard of Halliburton? They were mining cum oil services company. Actually, who's the lady that's Liz Cheney, who's running around with Kamala Harris at the moment? She's a Republican, but supporting Harris as a Democrat, and her husband is Dick Cheney, who was the Secretary of State under the Clinton. No, not Clinton. Under the Bush administration. They own Halliburton. And Halliburton is the world's largest resource services company. And Shell owned the plant, and they had Halliburton, who are mostly American, and the guys that work for Halliburton are like mercenaries. They're there for the money. And in fact, Halliburton had a lot of mercenaries going into Iraq during the Iraq War. And it was said that maybe Dick Cheney started that war so that Halliburton had the next job. Anyway, so we went up and did this program. There was about 40 people in the group, because there was Shell, there was Mitsui, the shipping company, because they all had to work together. There was Brunei, Royal Brunei, who owned the actual gas, and other companies involved, and we finally got them together. I remember a Scotsman who came from the North Sea oil wells. We were talking about states driving behaviours. He said, "Laddie, you'll no be telling me this." He really broad Scotsman. They're from all over the world, these guys. Anyway, they ended up finishing the first one under budget and on time. And over the remaining 4 heat exchanges, the teamwork was incredible, and they finished like 2 or 3 weeks ahead of schedule and millions of dollars under budget, and they didn't miss a ship. So that's the sort of impact that, rounding this out, developing strengths in all 3 intelligences is really useful. It shows on the bottom line eventually. Because what they were doing was promoting their best engineers into leadership roles, and that's not the way to do it.
That book was called The Peter Principle. Yeah, it's interesting. It's been around for a long time, but it talks about staff being promoted to one above their level of competence.
Right. So it kind of comes back to this idea of linear growth and how if you follow that trajectory, it can actually be quite detrimental.
Yeah, unless there's a transformation that occurs, and this comes back to the being. How are you being? And so obviously there's the doing as well, and there's that gathering more skills and knowledge. It's about the being though, because the higher you go up in the company, until you get to the level of CEO, then what you're doing is you're going to spend more time, and this is what happened with the engineers, is they tend to work in isolation anyway, and then they're given the responsibility of looking after others, and they're not cut out for that. They actually need to learn how to be that, someone who can in fact work with others and motivate others and inspire others and move into that leadership role. Leadership is a transformation, unless it's something that would it's not necessarily, you're not necessarily born with it. It's something that you will have.
You'll learn from the leaders that you've worked with.
Yeah.
You'll be an expression of the leaders that you've worked for.
Yeah.
Leadership qualities are often modelled.
Yes.
Just the same as your kids modelled the parents. The fledgling engineer models the lead engineer.
So if they had a good leader,
that's how we learn.
they pick up the leadership qualities.
So it all sort of trickles down. So if it's not...
I work with trainees now, so I have students who are trainees with organisations. It's just come to my attention that I need to, I always make it a point, if I can, to be there when they're signed up into their traineeships. Under the traineeship, we need to do an employer resource assessment, and often it is identifying that the company has the resources required for that trainee to be able to practice what it is they're studying. So whatever the qualification is, they need to have the resources there. One of the resources are human resources. One of those is that they have a suitably qualified supervisor. So I've, up until now, until a recent conversation with another student, thought, well, as long as they're qualified, we're good to go. No. This has played out in some of these organisations where these trainees are being bullied by the person who has been put into that position to supervise them, and some of them are young, so they're modelling, they're learning this now, that is how it works. Now what I do when I go to a sign-up is I'm going to say, I want to know who it is that's going to be supervising them, and I'd like to have a conversation with them, please. So that I can then identify their leadership qualities and how they will impact on this 16-year-old for the rest of their lives. Because this is their first aha encounter in a workplace as a trainee where they're learning to model other behaviours. Have you heard about that?
No, it's very important. Julie, can you explain the importance of empathy as a leader?
Understanding, obviously we talk within these studies on the differences between the different pathies, and Don will go into more detail there, but empathy, being able to identify where that other person is coming from or what they're experiencing right now, and being able to meet that, provide them with the support they need at that level without it turning into something else, is extremely important from a leadership perspective.
Comes
What
back
I
to
will do is I'll bring it back to Don to run through the different pathies for you so that you understand the difference between the sympathy and the empathy and the apathy. I think it's really important that we understand the different pathies and where that all originates from. Don?
I was going to say something, I forgot what it was.
Is this regarding empathy?
Sorry?
Was it regarding empathy particularly?
No, it wasn't. But
Okay. So what would you say the main difference is when you're working with a client, the difference between that sympathy and empathy? How do we demonstrate empathy? How do we ensure that we're providing that for, particularly in a coaching perspective?
Different types of empathy.
when we think about it, empathy is about understanding the other person. Unless we understand ourselves, we're going to be projecting and perceiving our own shit. So it's when someone struggles with empathy or understanding another person, they generally don't understand themselves. So that's the first thing. So empathy is about understanding the pathology. When Julie was talking about pathies, it's empathy. The pathy is pathology, the mind-body. So sympathy, the word sim, or the prefix of sympathy, is expressing the same pathology. So the difference between empathy and sympathy is, gee, I can see that you're really getting a hang of this. So I've just acknowledged and understood your pathology. If I was to sympathise with it, you might be going, I'm really struggling, and I would come up and say, I can see you're really struggling, and I'd have the same pathology as you. So I'm expressing the same pathology, or sympathology. Then there's apathy. What happens when we put A in front of pathology?
Goes away from.
Well, there is none.
There is none. It's gone.
There's an absence of pathology.
Pathology.
Who gives a shit?
Yeah. Don't
Tell
care.
someone who cares.
We don't care at all.
That's apathy.
And what would be the distinction between empathy and compassion?
Well, it depends how you do compassion. Compassion can be putting your arm around your mate and saying, come on mate, it'll be all right. Where you're not sympathising. Sim is when I'm going, oh gee, that must be really terrible for you. So my tone changes, my gestures change. Whereas empathy is, I'm still myself, but I'm understanding the other person. That sort of...
Yeah, and you're feeling, so compassion might be that you're feeling for the other person.
Well, that would be
showing
sympathy.
It's very, that you're not being the same as them. So you would say say that compassion is more closer to sympathy?
No, I wouldn't. I'd say it depends how you do it. If compassion is putting your arm around the guy and saying, come on mate, give him a pat on the back, come on, you'll be right, that would be empathy. If you're exhibiting any of the pathology of that other person in an effort to build rapport, quite often we do, adopt the same tone, cadence, even the language of the other person, that would be sympathy.
I think it's easy to metric. It's easier to put a metric on that sympathy, empathy, whereas compassion is an interpretation. You can interpret that any way you want.
Well, passion, the real meaning of passion is suffering, isn't it? So it's to do with suffering. So that means the prefix of means we're for suffering. So they can be interpreted in lots of different ways.
I'd suggest that compassion is
That's what I am, yeah, exactly.
is at a higher logical level than empathy. That is, it's a form of empathy, or the form.
I think it's a form of
It's
empathy.
it's a noun, but you can't touch it.
Yep.
It's like happiness.
Yeah.
See, this is my understanding of it, this is how I interpret it. That compassion can be empathy, or it can be sympathy, or it can be like stepping away.
It's a quality applied. It's a quality that's applied to a certain expression.
And it's my own interpretation of that.
So it's a higher level, a higher logical level. We haven't touched on logical levels yet, but
So this almost goes back to
it's more abstract.
Yeah,
the original
I agree.
conversations we were having about semantics and what meaning we give things.
Yes.
It's like this subject we're talking about right here, isn't it? People are giving these words and concepts different meanings for ourselves.
We haven't played the game, and I don't know if we've got enough numbers here to do the game. But for your benefit, we often play a game around meaning. And if we had another 4 people in the room, we would play the game. And what we say is, the group needs to choose a word, and we offer 2 words. One is sex, the other is learning.
Don, can I interrupt? Would 2 more people do it?
Yeah?
How about we do that? I'll get Charlie and Jamie and bring them in, and
With
we can do that.
piece of paper and a pencil.
Okay, let me organise. Have you've had a drink of water? Do you need to go to the
Yeah,
bathroom? or anything?
I'm good.
Good, you're not allowed.
How you doing, Charlie?
Good, how are you?
Hi.
Charlie, have you met them?
Okay. Choose a word group, either sex or learning.
Learning.
Learning?
You're learning.
We're going to work on the word learning. So here's the deal.
I'm switching this microphone on.
You're going to need to write the word learning. Write down 7 words that mean the same as learning. This is a exercise in meaning. 7 words that mean the same as the word learning. When you've got 7 words, just put the pen down on top of the paper and I'll know that you've done. If you need more paper, we have got more paper. Okay. Let's start with Jamie. What's a word that you've got on your list that you think everybody should share?
I think environment.
Sorry?
Environment.
Environment. Who's got environment on their list?
I think that sounds good.
You're on your own there.
Yeah, that's okay.
Charlie?
Studying.
Studying. Who's got study on their list?
Yeah.
You have?
Yeah, I've got study.
Jamie? Only 2 out of 5. Let's try someone else. Jamie, what's a word you think everybody should have?
Open-mindedness. Open-mindedness.
Open-mindedness. No, you're on your own again. Mike?
Cognisize.
No? How come we don't agree on the meaning of the word learning?
I've got one everyone should have.
What's that?
Growth.
Yeah, I have growing.
I've got growth.
You got 3 out of 5.
Yeah.
That was an easy one.
3 out of 5. That's the best we've got.
What have you got that we should have?
Absorb.
Oh, that's a good one.
It's a good one.
Yep.
No, haven't got it though. Yeah.
Steal it.
What about study? Anyone got study?
Yeah, we did that one, yeah.
What about transforming? Someone should have that, surely.
Well, it's the same as, growing.
No, it's not. That's different.
Yeah.
Starts
But it's in
with
the
T.
same, okay, whatever, Jules.
Undeveloped.
It starts with D.
Yeah.
I've got.
I had training.
I've got tree.
Tree.
Infinite. But how do
Tree of
tree and learning mean the same thing, Jules?
Because that's what happens. It's like a tree. When you learn, it's a growth thing and you get.
Tree of growth.
Yeah.
Growth is
So what did we just prove?
That we don't agree on the same meaning
Create
for one word.
We all make different maps. So those internal representations that we make are all different for the simple word of learning.
And we've trained us around the world The only place that I've ever experienced where it comes close to the same 7-word list was in Tonga.
They have some like indigenous words for that.
I think it was because they're hierarchical. I think they all knew each other really. I don't know, it was weird. It was the first time I've ever had so many that used the same word for the same thing. Could it be because English is almost a
I was
second
thinking
language?
that, yeah. I know the group
They
you're
have a
talking.
limited range of words to choose from because English was their second language. And we've trained this and used this activity in the Middle East and in Southeast Asia and each of those cultures.
Yeah,
Nowhere near
okay.
agreement.
So I just wanted to show you that.
Yeah.
That little exercise. I think you've done that before, Mike, haven't you?
Excellent. Yes, I have.
You hadn't?
I need to do it more often with my apprentices, with my students. Just do
Okay.
it more often.
Yeah, the assumption that someone takes the same meaning out of a sentence that we do, it is so hard to believe that we could agree when we can't agree on one word. So our understanding of a sentence that comes out of somebody else's mouth, it's a miracle that we understand each other at all. And I guess
When someone
Yeah,
says, I know what
think
you mean,
For me,
No, they
when it
don't.
comes to that though, it's like you have to understand the intent, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
I mean,
how
in
do you-
terms of like when you're communicating, a lot of it's not necessarily the words. For me, it's more like vibes. No, but it's more like the intent behind the message that they're trying to deliver, which is what you're having to really pick up on more than anything. That's why they say communication is
Vibration and
tone,
resonance. will
tone,
be
body
involved.
language.
So there are
stuff.
many other indicators.
Yeah, the spoken word is the.
I think learning, that's a good, if we've got students and we got them to do this exercise with the word learning, it might help us teach them and they know how to, if that's their reference of learning.
You've got another tool.
Yeah, because another
That was another word I use is teach.
teach.
Yeah, I had training,
me
which
too.
is what. Yeah,
Yeah,
I
I've
guess
got training as well.
I consider training and teaching to be pretty much the same.
okay.
Yes.
Thank
All
you.
my words ended up in ing because I was like, it has to be able to replace the word learning in a sentence and still make
I
sense.
put ing behind
That's
it.
why I was like, tree doesn't work, Jules. Tree doesn't work. I can't be saying, hey, I'm gonna go do some tree today.
Well done.
It's a tree.
Nah, I don't care that much. I just like to give you some.
All right.
Okay.
Excellent.
Go
Thank
back to
you.
what you were doing.
All right.
You may be.
Thank you for that.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you for participating in that group activity.
The reason we go for about 5 or 6 as being a minimum is because the fewer number, the more likelihood you've got of getting a match. And we don't want them to get a match.
Mm.
A match is when everybody shares the same word.
Right.
Okay, so we've got this notion of multiple intelligences. Organisations have intelligences too. So when we look at take that across to the corporate level, I think I've shot myself in the foot. So this is where your manager, where are we? A manager works on IQ, and I think I said before, leaders work on SQ, EQ.
Can we ask you the turning point of, because you went from working at Ford to working at commercial real estate and auctioneer and that type of thing, and then somewhere in this time you maybe got more inspired to work with people on this level, and you went into some education for yourself to learn, and you told me did a thesis on the unconscious mind, and sort of went about was this in how old were you, what was the trigger, what was the inspiration for you to sort of start this type of work in the first place?
Interesting question. I saw that as being the preamble to your list, and it had me reflect, which I hadn't done. So I'm settling in. Could be a bumpy ride.
Time.
Do we need to strap in?
Help people get to know. Take your time and help people to get to know you
I spent a few years living with my grandparents, and they lived on the Warrenora River in Sydney, and the only way in and out was by boat. You had to row. I had to row to school every day and row back. Nan had a clock. You know the old alarm clocks with the 2 bells on the top?
Yeah.
And she let me pull it to pieces. I never got it working again. But it kept me busy for a couple of years, trying to get this clock working again. I don't think it was working in the first place, but I was trying to fix it. And then I left school at about the age of just before my 15th birthday. And I went to Cabramatta High in Sydney, which had a migrant camp next door to it. And I met a guy there called John. We used to knock around a bit together. John English was his name. He's dead now. And I ended up getting an apprenticeship as a motor mechanic. And then went to... My dad was in the army and he was transferred to Port Moresby. So the family went to Port Moresby. And I was lucky enough to get my apprenticeship transferred. And I was working for a company called Baroka Motors. And it was had a single hoist and a petrol pump in the front of the thing, and it was owned by a guy called Vic Carter. He was killed in a car accident, and the company was bought out by a company called W.R. Carpenter. And I don't know if you've heard of Burns Philp. Have you heard of Burns Philp? The Big Island Trading Company. There's 3 Big Island trading companies, and by that I mean Fiji, Tonga, Papua New Guinea, that whole Pacific Island group. So there was Burns Philp, Steamships Trading Company, and W.R. Carpenter. They were the 3 big trading companies. The Carpenters bought Baroka Motors, and I went with it. I think in the 3rd or 4th year of my apprenticeship, they put me in charge of the outboard marine division, which there wasn't one. So I had to build the test tank and set up the workshop, which was very interesting. But the most interesting part of that was the Papuan people who, they used to build these canoes, double-hull canoes like catamarans with 2 big logs, and they'd put a 40 horsepower Evinrude motor in between the logs, and about halfway down the length of the log. But they knew exactly where to put it to get the best fuel economy out of them. And they'd cross the Gulf of Papua like hundreds of kilometres from shore. They were interesting people. It got me interested in languages because I learnt to speak 2 extra languages. One was Pidgin English, which took about a week to learn. But I must admit I continued learning the more I travelled around Papua New Guinea in later years. And the south coast of Papua, they use a Creole called Hirimotu, which is it's a Creole of those Polynesian Polynesian languages, because the people generally had straighter hair. They were more like Hawaiians rather than Melanesians.
Right.
So that gave me some grounding in linguistics, or at least being able to work out how languages came together. In later years that would prove very useful, because I don't know if you realise Papua New Guinea is the most linguistically diverse country on earth. There's nearly 800 languages. I don't mean dialects, I mean pure languages.
Wow.
Simply because of the terrain and the ruggedness of people just didn't communicate with each other. So they might have lived 10 kilometres apart in different valleys, and in 50,000 years they'd never met. So therefore they didn't share a language. Some of the languages were quite primitive. For example, that sort of clicking noise was common in many of the Highland languages. They'd make clicks with their tongue. and that was a way of communicating. And they would point with their nose. They never they never said over there, like that. They'd go, long up, long up. They'd point with their nose. I noticed that in Malaysia they point like that.
Right.
They point with their thumb in Malaysia and Indonesia,
Interesting.
because it's rude to do that, apparently. So that gave me some insights into language, and I progressed there to workshop foreman in Port Moresby, and they transferred me to lay. I'd married by that stage, and as workshop manager, but I had to build the workshop first. So we, with the help of a Papuan carpenter called Ila, we built a workshop, and we overcame a lot of difficulties. We didn't have a crane, but we had to lift these big trusses up, the portal frames, like an open web truss with a pitch roof on the top and 2 posts coming down.
Right.
And we lifted them into position. They were, I don't know how tall they were. The entrance to the door was about 4 metres, because they had trucks were coming in and out of there. The way we did that was we had a Land Rover, so we'd get half a dozen natives to lift the roof of the frame up. And we had a rope tied to the top of it, going to the Land Rover, and then you'd drive the Land Rover forward, and of course the frame just came up like that. And a couple of crowbars to get it onto the bolts, and whack a couple of purlins in the roof. About a week later we had a workshop.
Had a workshop. How big was it? The workshop?
I'm guessing in square metres probably 600, 700 square metres.
Big
Yeah, you'd have half a dozen trucks in there.
trucks mostly.
And as well as machines like a big lathe and a small lathe and the auto electrical department upstairs. And so Mike seems to want to know about my time with Ford.
Yeah. So you're mechanically minded always, and like to solve problems most of your life.
Yeah, Ford was an interesting one. I got word, one of the things that Broker Motors did, apart from Evinrude Outboard Motors, and by the time I went to lay, I was working in Isuzu. It was a different company, it was New Guinea Motors. But back at Broker Motors, they were also the Ford agents, and I heard that they were looking for a service representative in New South Wales. And my wife and I had my eldest daughter was born, and we decided that I should apply for that job, and I ended up getting it. A bit like a dog chasing a car. What do you do when you catch it? So I ended up being the Ford rep for the regional office was at North Sydney, and I looked after the dealerships from Penrith, Windsor, Penrith, Katoomba, right out to Brewarrina in the north and Cootamundra in the south. It included Dubbo and places like that. That was pretty interesting. In 1975, a guy called Lee Iacocca came to Australia. He was the father of the Mustang, and I got to meet him.
Wow.
I was one of, there were probably about 20 of us were chosen to drive the entourage around. Iacocca came out in Henry's plane, which was a 727, an executive model. Do you know Sydney at all?
A little bit.
The Boulevard Hotel in William Street. It was a brand new hotel at the time, and Ford had the top 4 levels, and we were on the bottom of those 4 levels. And you could have whatever you wanted. You could order it room service, because it was all on the US budget. And I think I paid about $1,000 tax because I was paid 24 hours a day for a week. It was amazing. But then, for various reasons, I ended up back in New Guinea after about 3 years with Ford. went to Broker Motors and talked them into bringing in UD trucks. They weren't selling UDs at the time, but I was involved at Ford in part in the release of the Louisville series of heavy trucks, which up until then Ford had only sold the English D series. I saw a market for the Nissan diesel trucks, and we with Dennis and McGuinness, who was the general manager of Roker Motors at the time, put together a proposal for the board of carpenters that meant them spending a couple of $1 million to open a truck division. The board said no. So McGuinness and I put our heads together and we ordered a few trucks anyway. And as quick as we'd order them, we'd sell them before they arrived. After a couple of years, the board said, how come Broker Motors is making all this money? Well, they're selling trucks. And we ended up with 40% of the market, which was pretty amazing.
I remember going through where they built the Ford Louisvilles at Eagle Farm in Brisbane. I remember going through the factory in the 1980s. And so you're obviously selling the Ford Louisvilles as well up there, or?
No, we didn't take Louisvilles to New Guinea.
You didn't? No, okay, too big.
No, we had bigger trucks than Louisville, but just the Japanese were cheaper.
Right.
And what I did was I specified the big truck sellers at the time were Isuzu and Hino. They had the market share. But I specified the Nissans to be about 10 to 15% better or more powerful than anything that they had. We they came standard with a 5 or 6 speed crash box. There was no synchronization on the gear shift, and they were just a heavier truck. And the Japanese wouldn't let us put turbochargers on them because they said the market wasn't sophisticated enough. It was a primitive market. They wouldn't allow us to put turbochargers on. So we put them on ourselves. We'd bolt a turbocharger on brand new trucks and send them out. Because the reason the turbochargers were needed was because of the altitude.
Right.
The Highlands Highway goes up to 12,500 feet. And in most aeroplanes above 10,000 feet you need oxygen.
Yeah.
Otherwise you can't function.
Yep.
So that was interesting. And I learned a lot. I was telling Julie the story about the old man I met, and they were putting a road through to west of Mendy in the Highlands, and they were chopping down trees and pushing this road through, and the road was to open up a whole new valley that was in there. And we went out to have a look at the trucks to see how they were going. It was about an hour's flight by helicopter out of Mount Hagen. This old man was standing there. They had a way of standing. I'll try and do it for you. They used to stand with their one leg wrapped around the other, and they could stand on one leg for hours with a stick. They always had a stick. And he was standing there, but he was crying. And I asked the fellow I didn't speak his language, but I had someone there that did. I said, why is he crying? He said he's crying for the trees, because they're chopping the trees down. And it didn't make sense to me because they're putting a road in. He said, yeah, but if they chop the trees down, the trees hold the sky up. His perception was that the trees were the posts that held the sky up.
Yeah, primitive.
I think he was right. In his world there was no need for a road, but they needed trees to hold the sky up.
Yeah, just really shows their connection.
Yeah, so then I came back to Australia and started a business in Mackay called Trans-Equip North Queensland. and went broke after a couple of years. Doing business in Australia is totally different to doing business in New Guinea. And ended up in Cairns, ultimately working for Richard Ellis, who was a commercial property consultancy. I started with Ray White, Richard Ellis, but then Richard Ellis broke off from Ray White and I went with it. I remember I went to a job interview with Peter Hopkins of Ray White, and he said, "What do you want to do, commercial or residential?" I said, "I don't know, what's the difference?" I didn't realise there was a difference. He said, "You're used to big numbers, so you can do commercial." That was a qualification I needed. And it took me 9 months to get my first commission cheque. But we ended up doing quite well, and Richard Ellis sold some of the biggest deals that were done at the time up there. Came back, actually at one stage, when the interest rates went through the roof, when was that?
Late 80s, early 90s.
Yeah. Commercial real estate just about stopped, so I ended up working, I'd sold a number of properties to Japanese investors. Ended up working as a property management situation with them, and ultimately moving to the Gold Coast because they also had property here, and amalgamating other properties for them and selling that stuff. It worked okay. But at the same time I was doing auctions, and I was also consulting to real estate officers, initially Ray White at Burleigh Heads, and then I had my own commercial property consultants that I just kept for the Japanese side of the business.
Were you auctioneering then? At that point, when you were doing your commercial, was auctioneering always part of the role of?
I used to do auctions for other agents.
Yeah.
I'd just conduct the auction, to roll up on the day and do the auction.
Yeah.
But I ended up training those agencies in how to handle the auction up to the date of the auction.
Yeah.
So that was like a little consultancy role, or mentoring, or coaching, or coaching wasn't a buzzword at that stage.
No.
What I found was, to get back into the NLP side of things, I could talk to their conscious mind. They knew what to do, but they weren't doing it. Or they were the best. Ultimately, the agents, the agent who owned the operation was ultimately the best salesperson. Yet he was tied up doing administration work. Yet he was the best salesman in the office. So that's where I got this notion: it's no good promoting your best salesman into sales manager, because you lose a good salesman, you end up with a crap manager. So, what do they say? The lawyer who acts for himself has got a fool for a client.
So how did you end up in Sydney at an NLP course? Was this all part of real estate? It was, wasn't it?
How do I end up
You thought you were going to a sales course in Sydney?
Oh, that's right. There was two people who I observed from a distance, and I knew them, and not weren't mates, but we could have a civil conversation. One was Don Agnew in Mackay, and the other was Peter Cryan in Cairns. And both of these guys I kind of didn't hold them in high regard, but they turned themselves around. They ended up ultimately being very effective agents, and I admired that in them. They wouldn't tell me how they did it. But I signed up for this course, and it was about $3,000 or something, $3,000 or $4,000. It was a week with 3 months study beforehand, and it was a NLP practitioner course with Tad James, and I had no idea what NLP was. I'd actually done the pre-study, but it didn't tell me. I had no idea what I was getting myself in for. It
How
was,
did you find the course?
I don't
Did
know.
you just look for it online or something?
No, there was no online then.
Oh, that's right, there wasn't either.
Online didn't exist.
Somebody must have told you about it.
Someone told you about it.
Yeah. They must have, yeah. That was back in the days when you had to dial up and
I remember that.
Do you-
Vaguely.
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, you had to dial
You
up.
had to dial a phone.
You plug it in.
And if you got to the, you know,
So when you
the fifth
travelled,
number or
you
something,
had
you to
phone
start
plugs
again.
and all.
Oh, that's
Got
stuff.
it wrong.
Yeah.
Yellow
And-
pages, newspapers.
Anyway, you went and did that, and on the first day, Tad got up to speak, and there was about 100 people in the course. It was at the University of New South Wales at Randwick, and he was talking a load of crap. He just waffled on, and talking about going on rollerblading, and he wore a helmet that did something. At the end of the second day, I made my mind up. I was actually shared a room at a hotel down the road with a guy called Theo Richter. You met Theo.
I know Theo, yeah.
Theo worked for the Australian Tax Office. He was an EO7, which is pretty high up there. So Theo and I didn't know him beforehand, but we met and ended up sharing a room with him. And we used to walk from Broadway out to Randwick every day. It was only about 2 or 3 kilometres, but it was a fair walk. And on the walking back on the end of the second, I said, "This is a load of crap. I didn't come here to listen to stories about rollerblading." And I don't know what happened, but I woke up the next morning and I couldn't wait to get back to the university. Theo he told you about that, didn't he? Yeah, it was amazing.
So do you think they were metaphors, these stories he was telling? They were just
In retrospect.
getting into the unconscious. You couldn't make meaning of it consciously, but you woke up the next day, you know, feeling like there's something about that.
Something changed,
Something changed.
and it was profound.
Mm.
Yeah, so I choose not to try and analyse it because it worked beautifully, and I'm not one to tinker.
So do you think this was in the early 1990s that you're at now?
Probably, yeah.
That you first did that course?
Sorry?
That when you first did that course with Tad James, it was probably early 1990s, maybe?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that course gave me some things to work with. And I ended up getting an office in 50 Cavill Avenue. I did some coaching work with the son of a property developer who had a spare office in his office. And he let me use it. Rent free. And then I shifted, I wanted something permanent. And for some reason or other he needed that office, or it was time for me to move. I went out to the old Westpac Bank building at Miami, opposite Miami High, near the caravan park there. And they had a spare office, but it was actually the strong room. And it was about the size of a normal closing office, but the walls were that thick. And it was soundproof, it was beautiful. And I stayed there for about 2 years. And I started doing general auctions and just slowly build up my coaching work, and coaching had become a buzzword by then. Up until then I just worked with people.
Do you
yeah.
remember who your first coaching client was?
It was probably the son of the property developer.
Yeah.
He was Scottish, and I can't remember his name. I think it was on the 8th floor.
How did it come about?
I think I was trying to sell him a block of land to build some units on.
Yeah. Did he buy it?
No,
But he
Yeah.
changed his mind about a few other things
yeah.
as well.
I've been very fortunate with premises, because then Andrew Davidson, Dr. Andrew Davidson, who got a fertility clinic at Robina, gave me a room there. You were there.
Yeah, I've been there for
Had my name on the door
Yeah.
with counsellor.
Yeah.
I always wanted to work for a gynaecologist.
Mm.
You were there when I first met you at the Rocket Building.
That was the
The Rocket Building,
Rocket
yeah.
Building.
That was it.
I think it was about 2012 maybe, where I met you first.
He was there 2014? When did because I was doing coaching then. You were travelling into
Malaysia.
Malaysia at 2014, 2015. So I think you were at the Rocket then. You're in the Rocket Building then.
2012.
Was it that much earlier you were there?
It was,
Yeah.
because it was about a year before I did the course.
The reason I know that is because I've got files on my old computers dating
From
from
that date, yeah.
2012. And so that kind of worked out. And then did trainers training with Michael Hall, met Sylvia Fernandez,
Mm.
and she rang me up one day and said, do you want to do a job in Kuala Lumpur? They need someone to do a 2-day training in sales management. I said sure, and then that's when I got a phone call from Waleed. You met Waleed in Dubai.
Yep.
He's an Egyptian, and he quizzed me over the phone, sent me a ticket from Brisbane to Kuala Lumpur, and I did a 2-day sales training for him. Went to the hotel on the night before the training, and they had it all set up in classroom style with desks.
Mm.
I got the hotel staff to take the desks out. I wanted theatre style, because I don't want sales managers hiding behind a desk to feel uncomfortable, exposed. And came in the next morning. The program was to start at 9 o'clock. I got in there at 8 o'clock, and the desks were back.
That was Waleed?
Yeah, Waleed had come in and put the desk back.
Yeah.
So I got them to take it. He said, you can't do that. These are all senior people. They've got to have desks. I said, no, they're not. They're just people.
Get rid of the desks.
Yeah,
So you got rid of the desks.
I said, just trust me, it'll be all right by lunchtime. Morning tea came and they weren't happy. But by lunchtime they were okay. And Waleed ended up being a client. He worked for a company called Marcus Evans, which used to bring trainers and guest speakers and whatever from all around the world. And Marcus Evans ended up taking us to China, Korea, Vietnam, everywhere except India. They took me to South Africa, to Bahrain, to Dubai, to Abu Dhabi.
You travelled the world.
Wow.
It was amazing,
Yeah.
doing a simple 2 or 3 day training on this stuff. Yeah, so there you go.